HBCU Digest Radio, welcome back. Continuing our coverage of distinguished voices within the historically black college and university sector. Today, we are deviating slightly from where you have come to expect our coverage into the world of sports, which sometimes, as we know, transcends a lot of the business and industrial elements of higher education. And tonight is a very special show. A friend of the show, a dear brother of mine, who doesn't like the spotlight, but thought that this topic was important enough to come on. He is the commissioner of the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, Gregory Moore, Esquire. A privilege to have you on, the commissioner, and also the head coach of the men's basketball team at the University of Kentucky, John Calipari. These two gentlemen are working together to give strong footing and foundation to the McClendon Foundation's Minority Leadership Initiative. This is a pipeline and a program that's designed to get minority candidates of high caliber into positions of leadership and influence within the collegiate sports world. So, gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have you on this evening.
Hey, thanks, Jared. Pleasure. Hey, Jared, Brother Jared, I'm a recovering lawyer, for the record.
You're only one step away, brother, at all times.
Yeah.
Let me start with you, Commissioner. You guys, and I think this needs to be said outright, the SIAC has been pioneering since your tenure, certainly over the last several years, in talking about acting upon the idea of increasing equity and access within the collegiate ranks. The SIAC was the first to put a full crew of women officiating a college football game. You have done wonders with coaching pipelines for former NBA athletes to get coaching positions in the collegiate ranks, several of which in your conference. You've done things to start volleyball programs, a diverse program at HBCUs for sure. With all of these things that you've done, why do you think that it is, outside of the Division II conversation, that the SIAC hasn't been out there enough, that this minority initiative program wasn't the first thing everybody picked up on and said, yep, that's the SIAC, that's what we've come to expect? Why do you think that the conference itself, as pioneering as it's been, has flown under the radar, so to speak?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. What I will say is that when I became commissioner, Jared, I tried to align the mission and purpose of our athletic conference office and put it in alignment with the priorities of our member institution presidents. And, Coach Cal talks about access and opportunities, been talking about that for years. And Jared, that's really at the core of what our schools have done for, well over 100 years, which is provide access and opportunity. So, some of the things we try to do is focus on is, there in the sports world, can we leverage, athletics to provide more opportunities in terms of, for professional development opportunities for African-American sports administrators. And obviously in the context of intercollegiate sports, there's some real pressing challenges in that area. To answer your question with respect to why we're flying under the radar, what I would simply say, and this doesn't just apply to college sports, generally speaking, if you are an African-American professional and you kind of raise these thorny, uncomfortable issues, it doesn't win you friends in high places. It's just not a good look for you. Mm-hmm. And, my mom and dad raised me to, when you see something that's unfair or inequitable, you have to speak to that. And I appreciate you giving us, our presidents and our league, that credit, because we've been doing this quietly for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And now that George Floyd has kind of, that issue has kind of, raised awareness of the larger issue of racial justice in the country, folks are beginning to pay attention. But I'd be remiss, Jared, if I didn't say that we've been flying under the radar in a lot of quarters, but there is a very short list of people who kind of paid attention to what we're doing, and Coach Cal is one of those folks. Michelle Roberts at the MBPA, Phil Knight, Willie Gregory, Kit Morris at Nike, obviously Coke, Home Depot. So, John Skipper at ESPN. So these are all people who are involved with and connected to, multi-billion-dollar enterprises who kind of, saw what we're doing saw us swimming upstream and said, you know what, called us up and said, what can I do to help? Unfortunately, those calls are few and far in between, but Coach Cal is one of the latest folks who again, Kentucky Wildcat basketball is a whole nother, animal, but he's taken time out to say, hey, what can I do to help?
Let's talk about that quickly, Coach, because you've always been outspoken. Anybody who knows sports, period, collegiate or pro or otherwise, knows you're an outspoken cat. And you've never been one to shy away from even issues on social justice and equity. Why do you think, or what is it that attracted you to this opportunity and this partnership to not only say something about, how do we get, more minority access to sports? A lot of people do that. But you're specifically saying we got to get more people in the leadership and executive pipelines. What is it about that stood out to you?
Well, let me do this first, Jared. Let me tell you why Greg and I hit it off. Mm-hmm. Dude's a solution-based, solution-driven human being. That's what I'm about. When people come in to me with problems, my normal response is, well, you think I'm not paying attention? I know it's a problem. Give me a solution. Mm-hmm. Tell me what we're going to do. And Greg and I, he's got really great ideas and a great picture of where he wants us to go, which is why when I talk to him, we have great conversations. You ask me why this, why now? When everything happened, and in however you want to say it, George Floyd murdered in front of our eyes. How can one human being do it to another human being? How can this be in this time and age? And then, you sit back as a coach, and my wife said to me, you got to speak, and you better come up with some solutions. Don't just talk loud. Mm-hmm. And she said, we owe everything that we have, every success that you've had, everything for our children, because African-American parents have entrusted us with their sons. That's why. And you need to speak up. And then my sphere of influence, I know there's problems with police, but that's not I don't have influence. Or the criminal justice system. Come on, we all know it's wrong. We can see it. But I don't have influence. But in access and opportunity, I do. My own staff, our athletic departments, and all of a sudden, the idea was to get a group of coaches together to work on their campus, inside out. Do your campus. And if we're all doing our campuses, this thing's going to change. And how do we get the best and the brightest who want to apply? Many don't apply because they'll say, I can't get that job. There's no way. Well, these are minority positions. Now, here's what I would say. You may be out there saying, well, I don't have the connections. Well, you do now. Well, I don't have access and opportunity. You do now. Now, you may look at this and say, this is going to be hard. It will be hard because there's only going to be about 70 jobs this first year. My hope is it goes to 150 and 300 in the next 3. But there'll only be about 50 to 70 this year. Mm-hmm. But here's my point. You still have to go prove yourself. But how many out there say, I will, just give me a chance. Let me in the door. Mm-hmm. I'll prove myself. And I believe what's going to happen with this, leadership, it's not just a voice in the room. You have to be in leadership and decision-making positions. And there are many in athletics. But here's what I'll say to you. There's great diversity and minority on the fields. There's just not much in the athletic department. Right. And that's the idea. Now, coaches are funding this. The coaches are funding this. I knew athletic direct. And Greg and I talked. How do you take away the answer no? You fund it. Mm-hmm. You promote it. You come up with how the applications are coming in, how you're filling the job. You give them 3 candidates for each position on their campus. You take away the ability to say no. And then, I don't want to say the word pressure, but I don't know what else I can say, which is we're leaning on them to get this done. And then we become mentors. The athletic department becomes mentors. And these are stipend paying $2,500 a month. We don't want anybody to have to take a loan. We don't want anybody to have to get a second job. You're trying to learn to be a leader, to be a decision maker. You're giving real work in a real position there for 1 or 2 years. And the coaches have committed. This is what's great about it, Jared. The coaches and the schools have committed to multiple years, like 4 years. We need that time to check the data, to make sure that we're doing right and we're handling things right. So all I can tell you is, Greg, how many times did we talk about this? 3 times, 4 times?
Many times.
I want all the school. I want your conference in this. But just as important, I want the students from the HBCUs to look at this and say, I'm applying. I deserve this opportunity. This is what I've been looking for. So that's why I said to Greg, how do we do this? How do we get your presidents involved? How do they make recommendations? They don't have to be athletes. They could be the student body president that wants to say, I want to learn. And lastly, and Greg, I'll let you go with this, we got businesses involved. So part of it is, if you don't get a job with a school this year, you're going to be in a database. And that database will be a minority database where a company may call and say, hey, I'm looking for a minority in accounting or IT or marketing, whatever. You're in that database. We're trying to look for matching dollars for businesses. So schools that can't, because right now it's about $33,000 per position on a campus that the coaches are being the point of funding. And there are many coaches that can't afford that. So how do we get matching dollars? I want each coach to be invested at some point. You can't, it's not for free. I want you to have to give up something. I want the school to have to give up something, and then we match. But this thing is, if we do this right and we're passionate and we're engaged in it, we don't just say we're starting it and walking away. It's not for optics. This thing is, what happens in 4 to 5 years? What's it look like?
So let me stick with you real quick, Coach, because I think you're a guy that appreciates keeping it real. So let me frame it this way. You've built programs. You've inherited legacy programs and built them to championship caliber. You've been in the NBA. What is the difference when you look at your path from a UMass to Memphis to Kentucky to the league, and you look and you see these operations from top to bottom, and you know that the business of college sports moves fast. Either you're ready to do this or you aren't. What, in your mind, what would a candidate or what could a school do to prepare a candidate for that kind of top flight position? And what can a school do to welcome that kind of talent to make them feel most comfortable and ready to succeed under a Coach Cal at a UK?
Okay, let's start with your second point. The athletic director and the president of whatever university that future leader is on, they have to let everybody know, I'm in this, and this is important to me. If it's important to the president and the AD, it'll be important to everyone in the athletic department. The coach needs to stay involved to let everybody in the athletic department know this is important. We're going to have 5 positions at Kentucky, okay? Once a month, they're going to be at my house, maybe with my team, maybe with themselves, just by themselves, and we're going to talk leadership. We're going to have speakers. I've already told Spike Lee this isn't an ask, it's a tell, just like he did to me when we played Morehouse. I'm not asking you to play. I'm telling you you're playing them. And I did. He and I have been friends for a while, but to have Jamie Foxx and different leaders to get on and talk about leadership, talk about making decisions, how to engage everybody. Leadership is about serving. It's not just, I've had more players that you would say they knew how to lead when they got there. Well, that born to lead, I don't believe in. I think serving, creating opportunities for others, stepping back and being wrong so someone else can be right, so decisions can be made, is so important, and they don't know it. Just because you got a great personality and you got some leadership traits doesn't mean you understand how to lead. And so we're trying to do that. And then, again, the access, what you're going to find out, why have we not been as diverse in athletics? Because there hasn't been the access. There hasn't been the connections. And now I'm saying, let's eliminate that. And let's see how these young, talented, driven, wired, just competitive, how they succeed. And I think what you're going to find out is wherever they go to work, what school, that AD is going to look and say, we're hiring that person. Mm-hmm. All right, they're in this position in the Futures Leaders Program, in the John McClendon Foundation Leadership Program, but we're hiring him full-time, hiring her full-time. We want this to be both about men and women. And I will tell you, right now in America, and Greg and I have talked about this, we have 7 of the major cities have mayors that are African-American women. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're making strides now, and I'm saying, why not in athletics? Mm-hmm. Why don't we do the same? And so I'm again, and then the other thing, let me just say this to the listeners. After we came up with this, I was so excited, and I got coaches on board. Not one said no, because it's right. It's the right thing to do, and it's the right time to do it. I don't care about Corona. I don't care what they're doing with athletics this year. If we have to work remote, we teach them how to work remotely, and then you come back. But here's the one question that came to me. It kind of made me feel a little uncomfortable. Why didn't I do this 10 years ago? Why now? What was I missing? What wasn't I hearing? What wasn't I seeing that I would wait 10 years that I could have done this 10 years ago? We could have done the same thing. And so, you talk about what we're doing. It takes courage, but this doesn't. This is easier. Now, it's hard to grab everybody, get them together. Can you imagine getting 50 coaches to agree to something that are like the big time? I mean, these guys or whoever they are, it's hard. But if it were 10 years ago, now it takes a little courage. The coaches in the 60s and 70s, I always wonder if I would have courage back then. If you're making a move that could cost you your job because you're trying to do it right, would I do what's right? I hope so, but I don't know. I don't know. And I do know we should have done this earlier, but Greg and I talked. Let's just do it now, and let's do it right, and let's have this be something that we all are proud of. Every coach, every commissioner, every college president, we all know we need this. We also want to include presidents. We want them to say, look, I'll take the future leader. Let him shadow me for a day or two. He can be in my meetings. He can see what I'm doing. He can see what the leader of a campus does. I want this to be more. I want every future leader to leave the program and say it was the greatest experience of my life. I can't believe I got this experience. And if that's what they're saying, that means everybody's engaged. Everybody's showing how important it is to them personally. And you know what? We're teaching the things that put them in the position that Greg is in to lead and be solution-based and be a guy or a girl, a lady that says, look, we can do this together, we can lead, and here are solutions to some of the issues.
Let me throw this to both of you, but I'll start with you, Commissioner. So with this training program, obviously it's putting minority candidates in good position with strong networks to be seen and be accepted by athletic administration at all levels. But more specifically to the programs which may be included at the HBCUs, do the candidates have to be trained on some of the unique challenges that black colleges face, particularly in with kind of college sport regulation? And I'm hoping I'm not being a boogeyman of any kind when I say things like the APR, things like lower resourced, being punished for not having enough money, as Coach Cal said. When you can't do summer school, your APR gets a hit for that. Guaranteed games. How do you navigate around that? What does fundraising look like within that scope? Are there things that this program will develop within the leaders or the leadership pipeline that prepare candidates from all kinds of backgrounds to understand here's what smaller mid-majors and smaller independent schools, and more specifically HBCUs, have to go through to then give them a greater perspective of what athletic administration really looks like?
I think at some point, Jared, those things will, every kid who wants to work in college sports, right, there's going to be a learning curve. And at some point, they'll gain an appreciation of some of the things you just outlined. But when you look at our league, we have some, incredibly, rigorous academic institutions. Our presidents and our colleges, universities produce very talented, bright young people. Mm-hmm. I think as a starting point baseline, we just need smart kids with a passion to work in sports. And I think those kinds of learning curve issues will resolve themselves. Use the word pipeline. And, that's one of the things I will say it's been very frustrating for the last 10 years because, when you look at the percentage of ethnic minorities who work in college sports, colleges, HBCUs, provide the supermajority of ethnic minority professionals and sports administrators across every vertical in terms of head coaches, football, basketball coaches, ADs, presidents. And very often when these discussions are had, we're not really engaged. And the frustrating part about that is that, how can you say you really care about inclusion in college sports? And to some degree, historically black colleges, which is the largest repository of ethnic minority sports talent in the country, they're not really engaged. Mm-hmm. And to Coach Cal's point, maybe segueing into APR, there are policies in place that actually disadvantage these schools and hurt these schools. So that's really frustrating too, in terms of trying to, rather than investing in these pipelines, we're making it more difficult to conduct business at these schools that are creating these talent pipelines.
Greg, let me add one piece to that too, Jarrett. All of the coaches that are in this, that one comment that came up, it's not just the mid-majors, the lower major schools. Whoever that future leader is, man or woman, they're going to have a job that's going to be like it's theirs, that they've got to perform. And they may learn to do 2 or 3 things, which is what happens at that level. You're not just this guy. You're this guy, this lady. You're doing 3 or 4 things that I hate to tell you, like I started as a volunteer. And you've got things you've got to do and things you're responsible for. So that would be good also to have that. And we want this to be a wide breadth of schools. This year, we're trying to keep it to 50 to 60, including football coaches, Lovie Smith. There are coaches that want to be involved, baseball coaches, women's coaches. But we want to make sure this first year, and I told Greg this, we got to get this off the ground and running in a great way.
Let me ask you both this then. And Commissioner, you said this at the top about, when you're doing what's right and doing what's necessary, it doesn't make you a lot of friends. Is there any concern that this will draw, I don't know if animosity is the right word, but it will draw a certain level of attention that could be counterproductive? I asked that because not too long ago, the ACC unveiled plans, for its equity program. And no one is stupid. Everybody knows that this is an opportunity to try to do what is right and reverse some things that have worked against African Americans for a long time. But do you think that you guys' level of investment and you guys' level of passion about this will create some blowback for you in any respect?
I do, but you know what? I say I'll be taking arrows, but I got bazooka holes in my body, so those arrows don't even touch skin. And what I do is I know we are doing right. And here's the difference between putting committees together, talking, and action, right, and solutions. And this may not be the best thing, but I haven't heard anything right now. And I also hope this bleeds into business and other areas where people, how about they come in here and we have 200 or 300 future leaders being trained in a year from 3 or 4 years from now. And businesses know that. And they come in and say, hey, we'd like to look at some of these students. Would you be interested in business? Right. How about this one? How about they get the chance to rub shoulders and elbows with people that they would never have an opportunity. Maybe someone that says, you know what, you're a terrific person. I want you with me. You're coming with me. And now you look and say, how in the world did I get this opportunity? Let me just say this. For me, my career start, I was, I'd say as a player, I was a gym rat. And I say I was small, but I was slow. But I was a gym rat, and I was into it, and I was a pretty good basketball player, but nothing special. I was a Division II. I played Division I for a minute at UNC Wilmington. But there was a man in the five-star basketball camp, Howard Garfinkel, that took a liking to me. I didn't play I'm in Kentucky. How did I get here? I didn't play for any of the great name coaches, but I had someone who lit a fire in me and say, you know what? Took a liking to me. You're going to be good. You're going to be a head coach. I wanted to be a high school coach and teacher. I didn't want to be a college coach. And then I was a pro coach, and then they fired me. But I look at it, and I'm telling you that that's what I want this to do, a springboard. Light a fire. Have belief that you can do whatever you choose. My mother, the greatest gift she gave me, growing up, she said, listen, you're not responsible for these surroundings. You were born here. She said, dream beyond your surroundings. And that was the greatest gift that she gave me, that she believed I could be president someday. And I'm like, what? Like we were, my sisters and I are the first college graduates in our family. My grandparents came through Ellis Island. So you look at this, and I say all the time, access and opportunity that I've had, that is white privilege to me. It's not just money. I didn't have any money, but I had white privilege because I had access to stuff. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I had to take advantage. I had to work. There was nothing going to be given. In what we're doing, nothing is going to be given. But it gives you a chance to earn what you choose to earn. Mm-hmm. Be who you choose to be. And that's why I say I want the HBCUs involved. I want Greg in this. He's in the middle because I don't think I did one thing that I didn't run by Greg. Like, tell me if I'm off the mark. Tell me if I'm being tone deaf. Tell me this is what I want to do. How do I get you guys involved? How do we do this step by step? And again, I'm trying to get funding so that all the schools can be involved in this. And now, look, learning, wherever you learn, you're going to learn something different. I'll give an example. Jarrett, if you're an athlete at Kentucky and you want in this program, you're more than welcome. You just can't train at Kentucky. Mm-hmm. You got to go somewhere else and train. And then say you go to Conzo Martin and you're at Missouri, and I call Conzo and I go, Conzo, how is she or he? And he says, unbelievable. We are so happy. And I tell my AD, Mitch Barnhart, and say, she's our athlete. Hire her back. She's proven herself. She wants to do this. Let's go. Because I don't want any athlete thinking, well, you owe me. Mm-hmm. This isn't about that. This is about, here's your opportunity. Take it. Grab it. No excuses. Go for it. And that's who I want to apply for this. And again, it's going to be tough. We may have 27, 28-year-olds want to change professions and do this. We may have people that are out of work right now that have great leadership and they know this is what they can do and they want to start over. This is going to be interesting what we're going to have in candidates. But I'll say this. My hope is if this is done right, we coaches, and I'm calling the other coaches, Tommy Amaker and I, he helped organize. We had to get together and say, Tommy, I can't do this myself. I need you. And Tommy Amaker jumped in, and he's done unbelievable work. But the 50, I'm calling them ambassadors, the first-year guys, ambassadors, who've committed to multiple years, 4 years of doing this. I say, well, how about if we can all look back and say, in 10 years, forget about national titles, league titles, whatever wins, whatever's happened for us personally. This may be the biggest thing that we've ever been involved in. This may have more of an impact than anything I've done. And again, my goal is to have every one of my players be something more. I know the families are saying to me, look, coach, we're entrusting you with our son. Do you understand? And then it's, we're entrusting you to coach him, to teach him, to lead him, to love him, to hug him, to tell him when he's wrong, and help him become all that he can be. And that's what the parents are telling me. And so now I'm looking at these young people and saying, you know what? How about they get the same opportunity? And that's what this is about. And then tying it all together with Greg, with Spike Lee, with people that are, I know will help with this. Maria Taylor, who's unbelievable with young women that want to get into her field. And she's the ESPN Rising Star. Matter of fact, she worked with you, didn't she, Greg?
She did. She was our sideline reporter early on.
That's right.
For our SIAC football games on Bounce TV.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to tell you, she is a rising star. I mean, but she is a talent. And she's now, I'm going to tell you, everyone who's been in her sphere should be proud of her because it's paying it forward. And that's the last piece of this. Anyone that leaves this program, when they leave, the last thing they're talked to about is your time now is to mentor somebody else. This has to have a ripple effect. If it has a ripple effect, it'll grow big fast. If it's just everybody worrying about themselves, if we're not doing this for optics, we're not doing this to speak louder than somebody else or say, be proud we're doing something. The only thing we're going to be proud of is if this works. If the data says, yeah, done good, then we'll be happy.
Let me ask that question. This will be the last one for both of you. How will you know in a couple of years that this has worked? What will be the cultural indicators? What will be the data indicators that showed you, yep, exactly what we set out to do has been done? Is it hiring? Is it influence? Is it titles? What will have shown you this was effective?
Greg, you tell me what you would say. This is what you see that this would be a success.
Yeah, Jared, success for me is providing increased access and opportunities for our kids, and also getting the corporate community to invest in those pipelines. Mm-hmm. Folks want the talent that come out of the pipelines, but you don't see as much investment as there should be in the pipelines that produce them. You with me? So to me, we gotta, my job is really go out there and identify resources. And I think it's also important to mention, you bring up Maria Taylor. Not only do our schools provide opportunities for, the kids who choose to attend historically black colleges, universities, but, Maria Taylor went to UGS and she got an opportunity at the SIAC. George Lynch went to UNC. Darryl Walker, who went to Arkansas, he had 21 interviews before, and he's been very vocal about this, before Clark Atlanta University gave him an opportunity. So, the head football coach at AD at Lane College went to Memphis, played in the NFL. So I think a lot of the Autonomy 5 folks, I'm not sure they fully appreciate how many of their former student athletes, football players and basketball players, become ADs and coaches and football coaches and administrators and sideline reporters. And I think if they had a better awareness of that, they'd understand why it's critically important to invest in those institutions at a greater level.
And I'm going to piggyback. I would say in 10 years that we look at athletic departments collectively and we say they look different. This looks different. Hooray. That different decision makers look different. That in 20 years, instead of having 5 or 6 minority ADs, we have 30 to 40 minority ADs or more. And then the other part that would make this a success is that Greg and I are arm in arm saying we finally got money in the pipeline for our student athletes so that we can prepare the next wave. So this is the bigger picture that Greg and I really haven't talked about is, all right, we want to be involved, but we need help too. And there's been different companies, and I heard somebody, where you heard different athletes or thinking about HBCUs. I love it. And different shoe companies are coming back saying, you know what? How do we get an HBCU in the Sweet 16? What would that mean? What would that be like? And, you look at the name of this foundation, the John McClendon Foundation. And John McClendon, again, was, before his time, he was absolutely an icon, but he trained under James Naismith, and he trained because he wasn't allowed to be on the team. But he trained under him. And then all of a sudden, he is the first African-American. He was a pioneer at a predominantly white school.
Yep.
He won national titles at Tennessee State. You're talking about the fast break basketball. What did Dean Smith take from him, Greg? Four corners. That's where it was.
The four corners.
He took it from him. And now all of a sudden we get to honor John McClendon with this foundation and what we're doing to change college athletics and what it looks like. What could be better? So
he also spent a couple of years, coach, at Kentucky State as head coach as well.
And he was an administrator, which is how the NACTA people latched on and said, hey, man, let's do this in his name. And that program that they have already in place, which is more for postgraduate education, those scholarships have been tremendous and have led to success of Martin Jarman, who's the AD at UCLA, went through that program. So, it's special. MinorityLeaders.org. So if you're a business leader that you're interested in supporting this, MinorityLeaders.org. If you're a candidate, if you're a future leader, if you're looking for how to apply, MinorityLeaders.org. And I would tell coaches or athletic directors that have an interest in this program how we can help you. Forget about money-wise. Just if this is something you want to do, we will help. MinorityLeaders.org. Did I say that, Jared? MinorityLeaders.org?
You know how to brand it, Coach. MinorityLeaders.org.